Some U.S. political forces are taking China-U.S. relations hostage and pushing our two countries to the brink of a new Cold War. From the State Department, spokesperson Morgan Ortagus is back with me today, and good afternoon to you, Morgan. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Bill. Thank you for having me.
A new Cold War, is that where we are on this now?
So I think it's important to put into context the actions that the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, took yesterday. We are required here at the State Department by law to certify each year if Hong Kong remains autonomous from China. The last time we certified this was March of 2019. We have delayed this report. And finally, after the actions that were taken by the Chinese Communist Party, Secretary Pompeo, in good faith, could not certify to the Congress that Hong Kong remains autonomous. This has been going on for over a year now. We saw the extradition law put in place in Hong Kong. We saw thousands of protesters for the past year take to the streets. Those protests were sometimes violently put down. People were arbitrarily detained. We've seen the erosion of the rule of law in Hong Kong. And the culmination, of course, came last week when the Chinese Communist Party told the world that they would be taking up this supposed national security legislation in their National People's Congress, which they voted for overnight. And this is just a complete rejection of the basic law that China agreed to, not only to Hong Kong into 1997, but I would remind everyone that this was a UN agreement that the Chinese Communist Party agreed to as well. They're breaking their word 27 years early.
You're trying to exact change out of Beijing. I don't know how you get that done. But that foreign minister I just quoted said the same thing in that interview that I just talked about. Here's what it is. China has no intention to change, still less replace the United States. It's time for the United States to give up its wishful thinking of changing China and stopping 1.4 billion people in their historic march toward modernization. Don't try and change us, is what Beijing's saying.
This administration is always going to stand up for the rule of law, and that's what we're doing here. You know, a hallmark of our foreign policy in the Trump administration is recognizing reality as the world. We talk about the world, Mike Pompeo talks about the world not as he wants it to be, not as we wish it is, but as it is. So although many American people love Hong Kong, students have been there to get an education, many people in the business community have worked there, even though we have nostalgia for Hong Kong and love Hong Kong, we have to recognize reality. And that is the Chinese Communist Party takeover of the largest financial hub in Asia.
Is this event with China tomorrow? Do you have much knowledge about this press conference regarding China? I'm seeing it as a one-line headline from Reuters right now. What can you add to that?
You're talking about the president's event? Well, I'm certainly not going to get out in front of the president, but I would just say he has a number of options at his disposal. It's encouraging to see the bipartisan consensus. And not only the bipartisan consensus, I would remind you that our allies, the United Kingdom, China, Canada, Australia, all signed on to statements today with us condemning the Chinese Communist Party's takeover of Hong Kong as it relates to their autonomy. So this is not about, you know, I think in the media we think everything is U.S. versus China. This is not it. Our allies around the world are also stepping up. They're speaking up. This is a pivotal moment in history, Bill, where everyone who loves freedom, who loves democracy, is going to have to say whether they stood up to the Chinese Communist Party when they totally eviscerated the rule of law, not only what they committed to Hong Kong, but what they committed to the entire world at the United Nations.
How far is your boss willing to go on that if you don't get what you want?
Well, I think if you're referring to Secretary Pompeo, he is committed to holding the Chinese Communist Party accountable. Listen, in foreign policy, it's not all black and white. We work in shades of gray. We often have to work on areas of mutual interest with the Chinese government. We will continue to do that where we can. But again, we're going to call the world for as we see it, not as we want it to be.
Morgan Ortagus, thank you for your time from the Department of State. We'll see what the president has to say on this momentarily when we hear from him as well. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bill.